Why not?
Welcome to Movies and More with Stacy Hovis and John Brandon. Every week, Stacy and John come to you with the latest movies in the marketplace. Media experts Stacy and John take you to the movies and tell you what's hot and what's not in the media world. Stacy and John host conversations about the topics in the films. Their mission is to guide you through the media world. Okay, audience, here's Stacy and John.
Hello, I'm Stacy Hovis,
And I'm John Brandon.
and welcome to Movies and More.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yeah, indeed. We're going to be talking today about the making of an independent film.
That sounds interesting.
Well, it should
We
be.
might know a little bit about that.
We spent a day or two trying, and we did that for sure. And I've gotten a lot of calls since we went on the air a couple months ago, and people say, you never talk about the stuff that you're doing.
Right?
You know?
We're going to talk about it today.
Well, we are going to talk about today. I got to tell you, it's kind of somewhat under protest because my father used to say, a rabbi that sings praises unto himself will
Yeah.
always have a congregation of one.
Right.
Okay.
But-
So I don't really want to brag, but I'm in the presence of greatness
okay.
with you, Mr.
Yeah, with
Brandon.
Mark. I thought you were talking about Mark.
Oh, well,
Okay.
Mark, he's
I'll take
pretty
it.
cool
I'll
too.
take
No, I
it.
mean, I'm not going to.
The guy on the board.
Yeah, I mean, without him, we'd be nowhere,
Sure.
right? Okay. But at any rate, to that regard, I can tell you this, that John Brandon and myself are, of course, both involved in the
Filmmaking process.
filmmaking process from an independent producer's perspective. And today we're going to examine those things that must be done
To lay the groundwork, the
to
foundation.
absolutely make a great movie. That's
Right.
what that I was trying to put in the right
Yeah,
words. Okay.
right.
So we're going to first off by talking about what is the basics or the beginning of a film, whether it's independent or big budget or whatever.
Yeah.
And that becomes the story. So, John, would you like to address that just a
Well,
little bit?
I think I can a little bit.
Please, by all means.
To me, I can tell you, I can't tell you what's important to other people, but I can tell you what's important to me.
We're here for you, John.
It's got to
That's
be
why we're here.
it's got to be a story that says something
Compelling.
about the
Compelling.
world,
Yes.
that somebody can sit and watch it, that they'll want to watch it for 2 hours, and they're going to get up and say, you know what, I never thought about the world kind of in those terms,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
The Godfather has wisdom,
Yes.
all kinds of wisdom. Some, a lot of it's sinister wisdom, but it's still wisdom. So to me, I want a story that's going to entertain me and hold me. I want characters, I want everything. Tom Laughlin, the guy that made Billy Jack,
Yeah.
he's got all kinds of stuff on YouTube that you can watch about
Sure.
what was important to him,
Right.
and he said a film it's a fantasy, okay? It's full of fantasy characters
A
and
journey of fantasy.
fantasy dialogue and fantasy situations
Yeah.
and fantasy places. It's just a big fantasy.
Right.
There's two kinds of films: those that make you lose yourself, and those that make you find yourself. Okay.
Precisely.
And there's not a whole lot of them that do both, but Forrest Gump is one of them.
Well, Forrest Gump absolutely is a national treasure. It really is, because here is a look at. I mean, you think about it. It's a story about our journey, really,
Yeah.
from the involvement of this physically challenged and arguably mentally challenged
Right.
young boy that had
He's
paralysis.
unassuming.
He's
not very
unassuming,
bright.
and he had, I believe it was polio, if memory serves, and he evolves from this young boy that was being discriminated against because of his physical and his mental challenges. His mother, who was played by Sally Fields,
Right.
who really, really, really liked her son. Okay, all right, but the movie evolves, and all of a sudden we discover that there's a hidden amount. You mentioned wisdom. There's a hidden amount of wisdom within this character. And as time goes on, he experiences just unbelievable, just unimaginable things. And we're attracted to him because we're wanting to follow him
Right.
all the way through the
And
movie.
they weave him through all this famous
do.
Americana,
America,
which just
precisely.
makes it such a strong story.
Well, yeah, and so it was kind of like a kind of a retrospective or historical kind of
Yeah.
kind of a journey that took him all the way to Vietnam, if you remember.
Sure.
Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah.
Lieutenant
Tend
Dan,
to remember that.
right? Who he saves in the course of the movie, and of course,
In many ways.
in many
not
many
just
ways,
physically.
absolutely. But what was important about that, I guess, was I should know this and I don't. But you recall who wrote the screenplay for that movie?
Trying to think.
It'll come to us, I'm
Yeah.
sure. It's right on the tip of my tongue. But talk to us about development of a screenplay, which is very, very
Well,
important.
like I was saying, to me, what's important is you have to have a great story that kind of says something about the world, or teaches you something, or is so poetic that it makes you just think of the world in different terms. Stanley Kubrick. I'm paraphrasing him, but he says it doesn't. A film doesn't create an alternate universe, something along the lines I'd have to revisit. But there's all kinds of famous Stanley Kubrick quotes. The
Right.
guy that made The Shining and
Yes.
Full Metal Jacket, and
Here's Johnny.
here's Johnny. And you know what? The interesting thing is Stephen King wrote that book, The Shining,
He did.
and I don't think he was real happy with the way Kubrick turned that into a film. Okay.
Well, there was some talk about. I got to tell you my very quick Stephen King story.
Go ahead.
So I'm sitting in the airport
Yeah.
at LAX waiting to catch a flight back to St. Louis. And I'm like in this front row of the seats, and then over from me on the other side of the ticket counter, I see this person. I thought, doggone, I know this guy. And the more I thought, and I'm straining, and I'm thinking, I can't think. And this individual, obviously, he picked up on the fact I'm trying to figure out who the hell he is, right?
Right.
It's just busting my butt.
You know him. but
I
you
know.
can't-
I mean, it's like my brother. I mean, it's like I know this guy, And so, anyway, like when you get past, we'll just say then past 60, you kind of have a short-term memory thing.
Uh-huh.
In this case, it was a long-term memory thing. So, anyway, I got up. I still haven't figured it out. And I smiled at him. He waved at me. I thought, damn, I hate myself. So just as I'm getting on the plane, it hit me. That's Stephen King.
Right.
So I mean, my God, I mean, he's like Mr. Movies,
Yeah.
and Mr.
Just an
Screenwriter. He's
ordinary looking guy too.
just unassuming as hell. So I tried to. Did you ever try to go back?
No.
No. What I'm saying is, and that long damn thing that
With the rope lines and all that
yeah,
stuff.
and sir, you can't go back now. You'll have to get on the plane.
Concourse.
And the concourse, and I blew my chance to BS with Stephen King.
Shame on you.
Shame on me.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's my Mr. King story as it is.
Back to one more thing about Forrest Gump. The thing I liked the most about Forrest Gump was it gave us a fresh view of the whole racial element
Yes,
in the
it did.
United States. Okay.
Right.
And it didn't beat us over the head with it. Okay. There's a lot of movies out there that they try too hard to make a point. Okay. And it comes off just too abrasive
Right.
and too rough.
Well, you have to ask yourself, what is the plot point, or what's the conflict? I mean, why are we visiting this, or are we visiting it, or is it just part of the journey as we go through the storyline? But in that particular moment, that was the time I'm going to guess it was like during the 60s.
It touches
60s,
on
yeah,
several racial aspects all the way through.
and the whole progress of civil rights movement.
And basically through the eyes of a guy who's just unassuming. He's not, I don't think, racist in any
No.
way, Forrest Gump.
No.
And he's looking at this and he's digesting this, going, well, wait a minute. What do you care if some black girls go to school in a white school, and the difference between white and black fighting together in Vietnam.
And his narration in that movie is reflective of that. And in a retroflexive sense, we look back at him, and he's looking at it from pure innocence.
Right.
Like, why do we have this conflict? Why is this racial strife? Why are these people doing this? He, as simple as he presumably was, low IQ or whatever, he could see much better than a lot of the so-called reformist.
Yeah.
He got it.
Yeah.
There's no reason why we've got any of this. But
And that's as complicated as it needs to be in many regards.
that's exactly right.
And the other thing, the most important, like in a macro sense, the overall element of Forrest Gump, the statement that Forrest Gump makes to me is even a guy that's not very bright can make it and make it big in America,
Right.
but he has to try.
Right.
He
exactly.
tries all the way through.
Well,
He doesn't understand it very, very much at all.
I'm reminded of a quote you say that, John, of Albert Einstein. He said, "Genius is 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration." So whatever it is, however limited or blessed you are, you got to put in that effort, and really that's what the film business is all about. You keep having to come back and come back and come back. And then as we were talking about the basis of the film business or making of an independent film, we talked a little bit about the story. We also
you have to have a good story.
You have to have a
or
good
you don't
story.
have anything.
You convert that to a screenplay. And then I guess as a screenplay writer, I don't know that I was ever worried about how long it was. You think about some lengthy films in the past, and of course, naturally, The Godfather is one. If we go back even further, we talked about this the other day. If you look at Godfather 2, Godfather 3,
Right.
these were all epic,
Right.
long played out films.
You feel like you've been through it with them.
Absolutely.
By the time the thing.
Well, I feel like I have to go to the bathroom
Right.
when I go to those things. Is what happens.
They wear you out.
That's exactly. But even if you go back to like the late 30s, Gone with the Wind.
Right.
At the
It's
time,
like 4 hours long. Three
I
and a
mean,
half, 4 hours.
it's 3.5 hours long. I actually watched that on cable the other day.
I remember. You
And,
watched it about a month ago.
About a
too.
month ago, and I had always came in at different stages of it or whatever. And then I got to tell you just real quick, there was the actual scene where Scarlett O'Hara is in the old mansion and she's trying to figure out what she's going to wear to meet this finance guy.
Right.
She has nothing to wear.
Yeah.
So she goes
So
up.
she thinks. Yeah.
So she thinks. And then all of a sudden, inspiration is born. She goes up to the window and she takes off this velvet curtain.
Yeah.
She
Wraps it around.
wraps it
her.
around her and does a little nip and tuck and has the I guess her valet or whatever help her dress it, and by golly, she looked pretty good.
Yeah.
And then I remembered, I guess it was back in the 70s, if you remember the Carol Burnett show
Mm-hmm.
with Carol Burnett and Harvey
I wasn't
Korman.
going to bring it up, but since you did,
But since how I
comes
did,
out with the curtain.
comes out with the curtain, she says, I saw it in the window and I just couldn't resist.
Yeah.
Well, sure, she saw it in the curtain. Why wasn't it in the window? But anyway, so that's all part of it that we're talking about the storyline. And then what's very important as part of that process, you almost have to be concerned, although I hate to screw things up here a little bit, but the copyrights, the legal stuff.
Right.
If you're doing an original screenplay, and I'm gonna give a shout out to all my young aspiring screenwriters, it's a very simple process to copyright your work.
Right.
And
Which I didn't know for like the first 10 years how to do it.
Well, the thing of it is that unfortunately, like me, I found out the hard way that you really want to get your stuff documented because as it happens, sometimes people fudge a little bit and they take
tend
your
to
stuff.
borrow.
Well, they tend to borrow unauthorized sharing is what we call it,
Yeah.
But it's a simple process. And today, I think the copyright fee is $50.
It keeps going up. Like
It keeps
it's
going up
like,
within,
I think it actually might be like 85.
It could very well be. It was about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago that I registered something. But the beautiful part about a copyright is that
You're talking about with the Library of Congress.
Library
Yeah.
of Congress, absolutely, and also you might want to consider too registering it with the Screenwriters Guild of America, and they have that both in Los Angeles and in New York.
Right.
So if you have two forms of documenting authenticity,
Yep.
that being the Writers Guild that we mentioned, Screenwriters Guild, and the Copyright Office, that pretty much says it's your stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, that's something that you might want to do.
And you got to understand this: the copyright's going to last a long time through the registration.
Well, let me tell
Library
you,
of
let me
Congress.
tell you about the longevity of copyright. Let's say it's just you, John, that's copyright. So
Okay.
that copyright is actually your copyright for 75 years after you have passed away. So by succession, your heirs, assigns, or whoever can inherit those rights, and they are proprietary for 75 years from the date of the last person that was involved with the copyright. So just want to keep that in
from the
mind.
date of the death of the
From
last.
the date of the death,
Yeah.
the anniversary
So,
date. That's
so
correct.
if I write something on my own,
Yes,
and it once I'm finished with it on the computer,
right.
it has a copyright.
Yes.
What you have to do, people don't understand the terminology. What you do is you send that to the Library of Congress
Right.
with an application that you
Yes.
fill out that
Yeah.
takes you, the first time you do it takes you like an hour.
Right.
But when I do it now, I just keep hitting same page,
Yep.
and it just copies the information
Yes.
from my previous one. You're actually registering the copyright. You're not creating the copyright. You're registering the copyright.
That's exactly correct. Now, the second part of the thing that we're talking about in the process is when you're looking at prospective talent. Now, I don't know how you would approach that, but a lot of times when I'm actually writing a screenplay, I imagine a certain actor
As a
or
muse.
actress. Yeah,
It
exactly.
helps you.
Well, it
big
does
time.
because if you can get into that person's persona or their personality or how they might say a certain line, like I've been working on something for quite a while, and I had Billy Bob Thornton in mind. He's just a unique character. He's got that girl.
Everybody knows him.
Everybody knows him. He's got that.
He's well defined.
Well defined. Well,
Slightly-
I mean, here, look. He was a little
slightly type A.
I would say so, and but he's just a good boy from Arkansas. That does some strange things. We all remember when he was married to Angelina Jolie,
Sure.
right? And they decide to carry each other's bloods around in a little canister, a little small
Around their necks.
around their necks. Now,
Like a
I don't know. Is that in case of emergency?
Break glass.
Break glass.
I
I
don't
don't know what the. Anyway, I love Billy Bob. I've met him a few times. He's a great guy. But I would have him in mind. And I've talked to a lot of screenwriters that say they have a certain comfort level if they can imagine that character saying their lines. I mean, that's part of the creative process.
It's a
or whatever.
muse. I just call that a muse.
Which makes sense,
Sure.
But then when you talk about a talent wish list, what's got to figure in there, and we'll be addressing this a little bit more, is when you're talking about budgets. Now, like I had illusions of grandeur. I was thinking in terms of Billy Bob Thornton for a movie, and of course George Clooney.
Sure.
And both those guys, their salaries or let's say their fees.
Lofty.
Well, that would
say the least.
That's I don't know what else is synonymous. I'm going to say out
You
of
have
sight.
to rob
You'd
like
have
three
to-
banks to pay their salaries.
Yes, that's exactly right. Or the interest off of Oprah Winfrey's money,
Right.
whatever. Okay,
For
whichever
a couple
comes
days.
for a couple of days at least. So, but it's important, I think, that if you can imagine one of these well-known actors saying their lines, whether or not you're blessed or not to get these folks or not, it doesn't really matter. It helps you during the creative process. Now,
Yeah.
wouldn't you say, John, that's
I
important?
read let me just throw this out there. I read a statistic, and this is like 15 years ago when I got real serious about writing, to sell it. There's, I believe, 20 or 25,000 screenplays written
Yes,
every year and registered.
right.
Just those are the ones that get done.
Yeah.
Can you imagine all the people that don't get done?
Get started.
Set out to
right
write a
away.
screenplay. It took me my 4 years to write my first one because I didn't know what I was doing. I was doing it by myself. I was doing it as a hobby in my spare time, and it's just you don't know the process. Okay, so don't feel stupid if you're trying to write a screenplay and it takes you a couple of years.
Right.
My best advice is read a book and get your hands on a couple of screenplays
Absolutely.
of films that you've seen.
Sure.
That really helped me when I
Right.
first started writing. There was a place called Script City. I don't know if it still exists, but you could buy any movie script
Right.
that existed. This is like 1990,
On
91.
Sunset Boulevard
for like
in
$25
Los Angeles,
a piece.
in Hollywood. Yes.
And I bought Rocky.
Right.
I bought Rocky 3. I bought the one with Harrison Ford where he plays the doctor. Was it The Fugitive?
Yes.
Okay. The One-Armed Man. Okay.
Right.
That I bought those 3, and I
Right.
think there was one other one.
Yes.
But it was very enlightening to see how it actually looked on the page when I knew it was a film and I was very familiar with the films.
Well, it made sense then because you followed it and you thought you remember how impactful a line was, and there you're seeing it on the printed page,
Yeah.
and you're just imagining the writer when he put that together. Now, keep in mind, at one point that was in the ether, that was in his thought process, and now he's converted that imagination or that thought into the printed page. Hence the art of writing, and really the beauty of it. And it's a way where I tell you what. A lot of times, I don't know when you write, John, but I've been most productive between about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, or at least I used to be when I had kids running around. Well, by the time they went to bed, and the wife was, she was tired. I was all by myself, shut things off, and then that's when the voices would come.
Right.
Now, I don't
That's
want
when
to
you're relaxed.
You
You got
relax.
some solitude.
Absolutely not. I don't want to suggest to you that screenwriters are schizophrenic, but most of us are. I mean, and we hear these voices, and then all of a sudden you find yourself putting these characters in these different scenarios or conflicts, and they take on a whole life of their own. Now, I thought that, man, I got to be a little bad. I'm going. I mean, what's wrong with me?
Which you are.
Which I am, but that's okay.
that's
Listen, I'm not crazy, but I'm a carrier. Okay, but anyway,
You got to be a little crazy to want to do
Absolutely.
this. I consider myself a little
absolutely.
nutty.
So Billy Bob Thornton, getting back to Billy Bob Thornton, he wrote Sling Blade. We all remember that. Remember?
Mhm.
We all remember Ray.
I have a couple of Sling Blades.
My name's Ray. I killed a man.
Yeah.
Mess with
It
my
was more
mother.
like this.
He grunts a lot.
Everybody was doing that voice. for
Everybody was doing that.
in the mid
and-
90s.
Well, that, and then they had to go to a throat doctor to have the throat.
Yeah.
But anyway, the whole thing. So
I don't know
anyway,
how he conceived that, right?
yes.
He was extremely frustrated. He came home one day and he was thinking about kind of giving up, and he got into that character, and he just started looking at himself in the mirror going,
He said it was actually a combination of a couple of people that he knew from down home, and this character evolved, and so it was kind of a thing where the character became the plot, became the conflict, became the
became the
screenplay.
story.
Well, that's
He
exactly right.
wrapped it around this guy.
But anyway, so when I met Billy Bob, I guess it was the second time, and we were kind of sitting around shooting the bull. I said, I'm going to tell you something. It probably sounds a little weird, but I know you've written Sling Blade and probably scores of other stuff I couldn't think of at the time. But I said, do you ever hear voices when you start writing? He goes, he looked at me just right now. He goes, no.
And he was serious.
And I said, no. He goes, no. He says, no. I mean, yeah. I mean, it happens. He said, you too. And I go, well, it happened more when I used to drink. Well, I still do drink, but I hear them voices too. And he says, it's all part of the creative process.
Yeah.
He said, I just start writing. He says, well, it was like when I was writing Sling Blade. He said, I'd be thinking about that little fella, that young boy that was in there, and then I'd be thinking about Ray, and then I'd think about the guy down at the filling station, and then all of a sudden it just came together. And that was one of the best movies I think that I've ever seen.
It's
And it was
very slow paced. You
Very
got to
slow-
have patience.
well, it's slow paced, but the key is that it was an independent, low budget film that became kind of like his calling card.
And
for the rest
somebody
of
took a big chance on him because he was not really a director.
He was not, but
He directed himself, which not too many people can do.
Well, the thing was, he didn't think, and he shared this with me. He said, I didn't think that anyone else could really get out of me what I knew I had to bring
Right.
to the table to make this character work.
Yeah, I relate to that.
So to that end, he was creative, but he was also kind of adventurous, because here he got money to do a film, which, I mean, that's where a lot of things stop and start by getting funding, and we're going to get into that
It's
next.
the mother's milk of
The
filmmaking.
mother's milk of fun, absolutely. And but just a tremendous guy, and I think
And put yourself in 1995, 96 when he made that. He
Yeah.
wasn't a big star. That movie made him a big
it
star.
absolutely made a
He
perfect
was
on
in.
that.
Here's a typical part for Billy Bob Thornton. He was in Tombstone.
Yes,
He plays the crooked blackjack dealer
right.
that
Gets-
Kurt Russell smacks around and throws him out.
Makes him look like
Okay.
a punk.
So he had it was I wouldn't call it I'd call it a secondary character, not a
yeah,
minor character,
right.
because it was important to the plot.
It was.
It established what a tough guy Kurt Russell was just
Right.
by looking at you.
Right, right.
Okay, as Wyatt Earp.
Right.
But those were the kinds of things Billy Bob Thornton was doing. He was not a big star.
Well, the thing was is that when you talk about a self-made person, you got to give him that credit, because what he did, he took the inspiration of his imagination. He took that and directed it into this beautiful storyline,
Yeah,
and really
he had to
evolved.
believe in
Well,
himself
he had to
all the
be,
way
yeah,
through.
he evolved. That's a beautiful part about it. But when we come back in the second half, after we go to our hard
Yeah.
break, which will be in just a couple of minutes,
Yeah.
we're gonna talk about that process and a couple other things. But just real quick, what I'd like to touch on is basically when we're talking about when you're thinking about where you're going to go with the movie as far as locations or whatever. As a screenwriter and ultimately, let's say, an executive producer of a film,
Sure.
where maybe even you're going to direct or you're thinking about directing,
Sure.
do you actually go out and scout the areas where you're going to try to shoot?
When you're still writing, or when you're getting ready to make the film?
After when the screenplay is done, do you actually go out?
I'll give you an example. When I made Under a Blood Red Sky a few years ago, I had no help. I had a very tiny budget, and I had actors that I knew were coming in from LA and New York for 17 days,
Right.
18 or 19 days. We shot 17 days straight, and we still didn't get to shoot every single page. But I spent, when I knew I had the money, I had my investor locked down. He was my partner. I spent about 4 weeks frantically driving around St. Louis, because most of the story, 90% of the story, takes place in either this drug house or this apartment where this guy gets robbed and killed. And my hope was I could find 2 locations that were very close to each other, which I ended up finding down in South St. Louis. But I spent every bit of 3 to 4 weeks scouting locations, because if worst case scenario happened, we had an apartment over in like Collinsville, okay, to shoot the robbery in. And then we had a drug house, somewhere in North St. Louis, and they were 45 minutes apart. Logistically, that's a problem. People get lost, when they're from out of town,
Right.
and they don't know the St. Louis area.
We're coming up on about a
it's-
minute to a hard break, but I'd like to revisit that with you a little bit, because coming up with locations is very, very important. There's a couple of movies shot in here, and then I'd like to touch on one that was made back in the 50s. We talked about this once before in the show, the
Bank robbery.
Great St. Louis Bank Robbery with Steve McQueen. So we'll talk about that, but it's a process. It's a labor of love, and
You have to love it, or you just can't do it.
the thing with this is that you have to love it for sure. Well, listen, we want y'all to stick in here with us, because the second half's going to be real good.
Movies and more.
Look forward to having y'all come back.
If you're looking for a new, informative health and lifestyle show to gain knowledge and inspiration to help guide your journey to think, work, and live more powerfully, then you need to listen to Sage Advice with Melissa. It's live each Thursday from 10 to 11. Now, whether you're trying to improve your life from a mental, physical, or spiritual journey, Sage Advice with Melissa Coleman, CEO of Sage Skincare, delivers weekly advice from industry experts to provide you with insightful suggestions to allow you to thrive with a better quality of life. Melissa's mission: to guide you through the uncharted waters of health and wellness, and to give you a voice to help improve your life. So be sure to tune in to Melissa on KWRH 92.9 FM every Thursday at 10 a.m. You'll be glad you did.
Hey, listeners, saying thanks to your customers is nice and polite, but expressing your gratitude in memorable and ongoing ways can boost your business. At Promo Experts LLC, we exceed our customers' expectations. For over 20 years, our product knowledge and experience has helped them with their marketing initiatives and trade show graphics. We are happy to put that experience to work for you. Quality products, great customer service, and prices are our #1 priority. We work with you to find unique, creative, and new ideas that fit your image and expectations, helping you build strong relationships with your customers. When you select Promo Experts as your marketing partner, we help you to see more than the big picture. For more information about this exciting opportunity, contact Diane Carson, President, at 636-458-5241. That's 636-458-5241. Let Promo Experts help you to move your business brand beyond the bland.
Many small businesses do not have a marketing manager. In many cases, it is the company owner that drives marketing and sales efforts with the gut instinct to survive. Even when small businesses do have a marketing manager, though, many of them are trying to navigate through the complex sales and marketing landscape with little to no success or budget.
How to Promote Your Business with Limited Money is a general purpose how-to business book written for business owners and marketing professionals by business owners Dr. Stan Fine and Joseph W. Clote. This guide is not intended to be read as a front-to-back chapter book and rather serves as a quick reference guide. Refer to this book as you need specific information and skip around as needed.
Promoting your business with limited money is one challenging feat, but there are unlimited ideas you can apply to achieve objectives you pre-establish. So, put on your marketing hat and let's take action to start showing your prospects the value your business delivers.
A little you need to know about Dr. Stan Fine. During his 60-year career, Dr. Fine has become an authority on sales and marketing business development issues. His presentations have made him much in demand as a speaker and seminar leader. He has taught business development topics at numerous universities across the United States and has conducted over 500 sales and management seminars. Some of Dr. Fine's credentials in corporate America are currently Dr. Fine serves as a co-host of the To Your Business radio show on KRH 92.9 FM in St. Louis and a co-host of Nationwide Daily Radio Show on my Genre Radio Network on the Zeno Media platform. In 100 cities, he is also on a daily TV show on the Valuable TV and the Real TV networks. Go and get a copy of How to Promote Your Business with Limited Money today.
To purchase your copy of How to Promote Your Business with Limited Money, go to It's Your Business website at www.itsyourbusinessradio.com.
And welcome back to Movies and More. I'm Stacey Hovis with John Brandon. Yeah, we know
Let
who you
me
are.
say it, will you?
Well, I know your mom's listening. And of course, that's. But anyway, when we were in our other half hour there, we were talking about the making of an independent film, and of course, there's all kinds of nuances and finesses that you have to do to achieve that. And so we walked through a few of them, and now I'd like to talk about when you're actually putting the budget together for what we are talking about now, low budget independent films.
Yep.
And part of that, of course, includes what we call in the business the above the line and the below the line cost. And the above the line, of course, involves the storyline, things that we were talking about. And of course, below the line is all the industry stuff, the people behind the camera, the production people, the gaffers, the best boys, costumes, wardrobe, etc. And whenever you're writing a screenplay, John, do you mentally give any consideration as you're writing to it, like, well, gosh, I can't really do that because that's going to be a real expensive scene to shoot, or do you even think about that?
Absolutely, great question. The way I look at it is I can do this movie when I first start to set out to write the first page. Okay, when I've got all my notes together and I've gathered my thoughts and I know where the story's going to start and go, I say to myself, if I can do this any way I want with whatever actors I'd like, whatever locations, whatever kind of budget, that's the story I want to write, And Stanley Kubrick said, if you can put it on a page, you can turn it into a movie.
Right.
Okay. If you have enough money. So I go big when I first start to write. I go big. I think in terms of what if I do make this great and I can sell this to some big guy like Steven Spielberg or something,
Right.
You got to dream a little bit. It's a business of dreams.
Well, it absolutely is. I mean, they call Hollywood Tinseltown or the stuff that dreams are made of.
Absolutely. If you don't have the dreams, you can't write.
well,
you, can't
you
make
got to
film.
be motivated.
You have to believe that what you've got in your head
It's going to work.
can turn into something that a billion people are going to like.
Well, as part of the what would be the budget as we're talking about, you're still in the process. You're always kind of kicking the tires on prospective funding sources,
Sure.
be it angel investors or corporations or just individuals or of course studios. The big thing that people may or may not realize that the Hollywood system, the studio system, first and foremost, the studios are banks.
Right.
They are large
invest in their
finance.
own.
They invest in their own stuff. So a lot of times, what will happen is that they have their own individual production companies that they're known to work with day in and day out. One of the interesting things was someone said to me the other day, Stace, I read where 80%, check this out, 80% of all Hollywood studio films lose money.
Absolutely.
Now, they asked me, well, can you explain that?
It
Now,
takes explanation.
well, it really, I mean, there's probably several, but what comes to mind is this, and maybe this is kind of maybe sour grapes on my part, but when you look at a lot of these films that were made by fairly well-known producers, directors, different people, and
Yeah.
what we call the above the line
Talking lemons.
lemons,
Yeah.
and they
Ishtar comes to
well,
mind. Nobody can guarantee.
no, nobody can
100%
guarantee anything.
successful.
But the thing of it is that it seems like the Hollywood studio system awards failure with more opportunities to fail. Now, you could say, well, there are more opportunities to succeed. But if you look at some of these people, they have made 2, 3, 4, or 5 movies that laid an egg that absolutely did not
Baz
recover.
Luhrmann, we were talking
Well,
about last week.
they didn't recover
He's
the
made
cost.
some great ones, and he's made some big
Well,
ones.
and that happens. But the thing of it is that any other industry that you want to talk about, I know, John, you're into sports and hockey and so forth. If you have a hockey coach that's had 2 loser seasons, that guy's going to be looking for another job because
Probably.
he gets his walking papers.
Unless he won the Stanley Cup
Unless
a couple
he won
years
the
ago,
Stan-
like Craig Berube.
Well, and the thing
Yeah.
was, you can ride that out so long, but the point is,
You can only stink that bad for the
for
Blues are having a bad year.
The Blues are-
they had a
right.
fire sale. And,
well, we're all
perfect
Blues.
example.
We're all Blues fans, being down home folk from St. Louis.
Yeah.
But the point is that how can you continue to run a business where failure seems to be accepted?
well, Charles Krauthammer once said, "If something can't continue, it won't."
Well, that or at least that should be the case.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Hollywood is not that. Now, of course, the other aspect of what we're talking about is once you get through these 5 things that we've talked about, then eventually you're going to say, well, okay, once our film is actually in the can, and as an independent producer, we're talking about Billy Bob, he had a decision to make when that film was completed. Who is going to distribute
We're talking
it?
about Sling Blade.
We're talking
Yeah.
about Sling Blade. And now, how is he going to monetize that? How is he going to realize the most possible income from that content?
Right.
So so we're talking about distribution, and which goes into either theatrical, streaming, cable, syndication, or Redbox.
Yeah.
When you looked at various ways that your films was going to make money, what consideration were you at? What level of thinking were you?
Well, I think when I first started doing this, Blockbuster Video was one of my favorite places
Sure.
to go. I every night I was a TV news anchor. I got out of work at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Mhm.
I went to the gym, and I came back and I was ready to relax at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
And I had 5 hours to kill before I had to go to bed. And I rented a movie almost every day, but that really doesn't exist anymore. You got the Redbox.
Yeah.
I don't know that Redbox is a huge.
I don't know it is either. It's still out there, and that whole concept or that whole method of we'll just say post theatrical distribution. I know it's out there. I see it. I've seen it more. I recently came back from LAX, and I saw those Redbox things.
Sure,
just
they've been out for 10 years or
but
something.
but
Yeah.
there seems to be more of a concentration of those.
They're in
out west.
McDonald's. They're
Well,
in
they're-
grocery stores.
wherever.
They're-
So the thing of it is that it has a lot of. Now, I'll tell you something else. I might want to address this. there was a distributor that was talking to me, and we went through, just like we said, the theatrical, the streaming, the cable, the syndication, and the Redbox. And he said, Stace, there's another thing that you probably never thought about. And I says, okay, I probably didn't. And that's a hospitality business. Now, there's actually systems that are kind of like what I would call in-house cable channels, where if you're at, and I'll just give an example. I'm going to give a plug here to Drury Inns. If you go into a Drury Inn and you rent a room and you look at the television, there's like a little channel guide,
Right.
and then there's a select content guide.
Right.
And you can actually go on this thing and you can download certain movies
To watch. Yeah.
that they have.
Yeah.
But there's an actual business of distribution that's centered around these film distributors going to these individual hotel or hospitality
Yeah.
chains to market these films. And
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was a separate business. But anyway, that's just
Well, I mean, you think in terms. Back when I first started taking this seriously, I was working in television news. I was a TV news anchor in Nebraska and Quincy, Illinois.
right.
And I simultaneously the last few years started making a short film, usually on my vacation. I'd have 2 weeks vacation every year, and back then, the only thing in my head was two things. I want to get it on the screen on the big screen in theaters, and I want to get it to Blockbuster Video. Those were the two big things back then. There was no such thing as streaming
Right.
or
Non-existent.
Redbox.
Exactly.
And you got to also consider before you ever shoot one frame of film, if you think it's going to end up in movie theaters, you better have a real high quality
Yeah.
project as far as visually, and because there's a million ways to do it wrong. But we talked about this a week or two ago. A lot of people are actually watching TV shows and stuff on their phones. Okay.
Right.
The kids, we call them kids, 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds, they're kids, right?
I got
They
grandkids
will
that
watch.
old.
Guess what? It doesn't have to be as high a quality.
Right.
If you intend to show it on the phones.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
people are their phone says everything about them, basically.
Well,
Marketing companies know that.
One thing I'd like to address real quick too is this: as an independent, I'm reminded of the movie The King's Speech back in
Right.
2009, I believe it was.
Yeah,
Colin
won the
Firth-
Oscar for Best Picture.
Best Picture, actually. Now, to give you just a little background on that movie was produced in England. It had an American budget of about 12 and a half or 13 million US dollars. The thing is that after that movie was produced, these guys were absolutely strapped. I mean, they had zero
They
cash
spent every penny
And then
on
some-
getting it.
and then some
edited.
putting it in the can, as
Yeah.
it were. Okay, so now they're trying to distribute it. Well, the good news is we have the film made. The not so good news is how are we going to distribute this thing? How are we going to get out to the public? Well, at that time, and this is kind of pre-scandal, if you will,
Yeah.
guy by the name of
Harvey Weinstein.
Mr. Weinstein.
Before he got in all this trouble.
well,
He was doing the dirty deeds, but he
hadn't been caught yet.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So, I mean, that kind of reflects bad on his morality. And of course, it eventually cost them all their business. But those folks from England went to Mr. Weinstein and said, listen, we've got this film. We think it's got potential. What can you do us? Well, it was kind of like a thing where the golden rule, the man with the gold rules, made the producers a deal that they would pay the $13 million with interest or care, whatever it was, for the film, and then they would give the producers a piece of the film. So they sold, in effect, their movie to Harvey Weinstein, recovered the cost of production. Well, bottom line was the movie went on, like you say, to win the Academy Award. And I believe it had a domestic and international gross of just under $270 million.
Yeah.
Now, from an independent film that only cost $13 million, that was pretty good return.
Right.
But the thing of it is that what people don't realize is that you just don't make a film and go to a Cineworld or AMC or Cinemark or Marcus or whatever.
Chains. Yeah.
Basically, you can show up, but they're going to say, okay, and you got how much money? we're going to charge you X amount of money per day or per screen or whatever to have your film. And then you really have to be worried about your own promotion and advertising of it.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of independent film producers
They don't
kinda-
plan.
They don't
at all.
plan that,
Not at all.
and unless you forecast that
You
as
have
an
to put
event,
it in the budget.
it absolutely has to be in a budget. So I just thought we'd address it real quick. One thing I want to talk to you about, John, have you ever looked at a book or getting the story rights from, let's say, some notorious figure or whatever, where you want to do the movie about this person's life or about the event or whatever, whether it's a book or just an actual event? Have you ever looked at
I
acquiring the
have
rights to that?
thought about things like that, and I've been involved with 3 books professionally going back 25 years. And the one thing that the creator of a book can do to you is pull the rug out from under you, you know?
Right.
So I'm a big believer. This is just me, John Brandon.
Sure.
I'm a big believer in creating something from scratch because it's fiction and you can write anything you want and nobody can tell you that you're full of it, you know?
Right.
You can do anything you want. I say on my IMDb page, you know, that fiction is so much easier to write because it has no limitations.
Right.
True stories have limitations.
And less legal liability
And-
potential.
And let's say you read a book about, you know, anybody, some guy that did something spectacular, and you want to turn his story into a feature film. Okay, you've got to jump through so many hoops. I'm not trying to throw water on anybody's parade, but it's a lot tougher road to hoe. And you can have a million different hangups for a million different reasons. Something that I got involved with, I actually was involved with 4 books professionally. One I turned into a screenplay for a guy who died shortly after that. And he was a pretty cooperative person, but the person that took over his estate was not.
Right.
So that's why nothing ever became of it. I just gave up on it. I basically wrote off, 3 months of my life turning this guy's book into a screenplay.
Well, it's funny you mention that because we've got this thing now with the royal family and the whole business with
You talking about the Meghan Markle Harry thing?
Well, that's almost turned into like
A circus?
it really is
Soap opera.
And you talk about family scandals or problems with. I mean, the brothers aren't talking anymore. The king is about ready to disown him, Prince Harry or wherever. I don't even know if they
I
call
have
him
a
a
take
prince.
on that.
Oh,
I
go
think
ahead,
it's
what is
just they went to some age. I'm talking about Harry and
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is just a personal
American,
belief.
yeah.
This is what I believe. I'm not
Right.
saying it's true, but my gut is they went to some public relations agency and said, "How can we milk this?
Right.
How can we make as much money as we can off our name?"
Basically, prostitute
they
the
said,
name of the family.
Here's what you guys do.
Yeah.
Here's what you say. Here's your approach. You do a documentary. You do this. You say all this outrageous stuff. Because as far as some of these slimy public relations
Right.
agencies
Sure.
go, there is no such thing as bad publicity.
Right.
All publicity is
Can be
good. It will
monetized.
help you.
Absolutely.
Can be monetized.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing too, when I guess they first appeared on Oprah Winfrey's special, they pretty much started to let their hair down, and it seemed like it was a locomotive. And as the locomotive gained, there was more and
A
more
machine.
more machine, more dirt, more stuff.
Yeah.
And then
More controversy.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, it's like they're at a certain level of disclosure about really what amount to be proprietary stuff from the royal family,
Yeah.
and now it's like the market is demanding more and more stuff.
Yeah.
They want to know more inside stuff, and of course now, whether you look at this right or wrong or whatever, it kind of seemed like they were playing off of her
Meghan Markle.
Meghan Markle's ethnicity.
Yeah.
And there was some question about the Queen was questioning. I wonder what color they'll be.
Yeah.
I can't, for the life of me, imagine that woman ever saying that.
Yeah.
or anybody
You'll
ever
never
seen
know
it.
for sure. But
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. They build controversy out of the intrigue or the
something that's extraordinarily difficult to defend
It
if
really-
once you've been accused of it.
It really is, and the reality is that now, of course, she dies, and I got to tell you, probably she died of a broken heart because the whole business with Prince Diana and that whole thing, and now all of a sudden we go from that to where the descendant, her grandson, all of a sudden is bad mouthing the crown.
Yeah.
That's got to be just a kick in the groin. It really is.
Well, let me touch on. Let's back this up just a hair, if we can.
Sure.
I don't want to throw any cold water on anybody's, dreams of
Yes.
turning someone else's book into a screenplay,
Mhm.
because it can be done. Stanley Kubrick, the greatest filmmaker
Sure.
in my book, that was his bread and butter.
Right. Sure.
He didn't create stuff from scratch. I'm the total opposite. I create crazy ideas from nothing. Okay.
Right.
And develop them. Okay. But Stanley Kubrick was a big book reader. He loved to sit and read. Okay. If he wasn't making a film, he just sat around and read. He had a couple other hobbies, but he would find a book every couple of years that just really grabbed him. And guess what? They all turned into his films.
Yeah,
From I guess Spartacus to Lolita,
Yes.
to Dr. Strangelove, 2001: Space Odyssey. He collaborated with Arthur C. Clarke on that.
Absolutely.
Made it a movie 30 years ahead of its time.
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
And it wasn't until Star Wars came out about 8 or 9 years later that kind of overtook
Yeah.
the cinematography and the whole just impact of something that
Yes.
spectacular.
Right.
Then he did A Clockwork Orange, which was a book written by Anthony Burgess.
Mhm.
It was a what if story. What if government tried to force people to change? Tried to
You mean like they are now?
yeah, tried to turn a bad guy
Yeah,
into
sure.
a benign guy, not necessarily a good guy, but
Right.
a benign guy.
Well, then you can talk about Manchurian Candidate, and that whole business about mind control or whatever.
Sure.
And then we
And
fast
it got
forward.
remade
Well, it got remade, and
15
then
years ago.
and the whole thing within, I guess that whole time frame, we come along with the whole thing with the assassin of Robert Kennedy.
Right.
He swears to this day, he it was like he was on a fog.
Oh,
he
we're
woke
talking
up,
about Sirhan Sirhan. He thinks he was programmed.
He thinks he was programmed.
Yeah.
And I was getting back to Manchurian Candidate. Now, is that possible? One thing's for sure, it's been it's 54 years now, almost going on
Yeah,
55. Going on, 55 in June. And, he's still in prison, so I guess they don't want him out. He will die in jail, by the
Yeah,
way. I'm
yeah.
kind of convinced of that. We were talking about earlier the legal copyrights and so forth, and I want to make mention again about a film that was made in St. Louis, and I'm always very, very proud of St. Louis. We have just a lot of talent, a lot of backdrop to make a really good film. And one of the films that came out, the current title or the existing title was called The Game of Their Lives.
Right. About the 1950, I think it was,
1950
World Cup soccer game.
It was Pan Am. It's what Pan Am Games.
Between the U.S.
Absolutely. But anyway, that was the name of it. And then it had to be changed to the Miracle Match. And the reason is that Philip Anschutz, who was the executive producer and funder of, I believe it was a $14 million budgeted film, had it all packaged, had it all together, was going out. And of course, Mr. Anschutz was a 60% owner of the Regal Theater chain,
Right.
which they were known as then.
Right.
And then he gets a cease and desist letter from a gentleman that had the copyright.
He wasn't the first
He
one.
wasn't the first guy, the copyright owner of the name Game of Their Lives. Now, I think it was really kind of a stupid thing on this guy's part. He wanted $5 million for the right to that name. Well, Philip had $14 million in a movie that should only cost him about 7 or 8, so he wasn't real happy about his budget.
Yeah.
And here's his partner that comes along and wants this $5 million. Well, he pretty much told him to go pound slaying, right?
Yeah.
And so he had to change it over to the Miracle Match. So this gets back to what we're talking about the legal aspect of the show business, the business of show. Very, very important that you secure, in my opinion, a copyright or a intellectual property attorney.
Yeah.
To guide you through the legalities of owning the rights to your original content or your adaptation, like we talked about, of a book, to get the necessary releases and hold harmless agreements and so forth that need to be put in place. And here, Mr. Anschultz, I mean, the guy's worth like 14 or 15 billion dollars, and he made a mistake. Someone fell asleep at the switch. They didn't run the title of the game of their lives.
Yeah.
And when they found out about it, it was just a little bit too late. And then all of a sudden, cost them a tremendous amount of trouble. And what was sad about that was, I mean, it wasn't a great film, but it was okay.
Yeah.
It should have made a little money. But I think of a $14 million gross, I think their total net income, or total gross income, theatrically was $440,000.
Right.
So needless to say, it
Right.
lost money.
Yeah.
But that just gets back to what we're talking about, the legal
Well,
stuff.
let me say this. If you're a screenwriter or an author, most of this stuff can be avoided if you have a nice, healthy, friendly, respectful conversation before you ever get started about
Right.
who wants what and who's going to do what and who has the right to pull the plug on something if they don't like something the way it's going or whatever.
Right.
Their Uncle Charlie came in the room and saw that they were writing a story about whatever and said, well, you didn't think about this, son.
Right.
Okay. So you have to head off. If you can head off all the potential problems, you can avoid probably 99% of these ugly things that happen,
Right.
like with the game of our lives.
Real quick, you're listening to KXOK 102.9 FM, Movies and More. Would like to say this if I could. John, I get questions all the time about how you can either break into the business or what we're talking about, the various pitfalls, whatever. Is there a website or an email address that you would care to give out if someone wanted to ask questions of you? Would you feel comfortable with that?
Sure. They could send
Yeah,
it
go ahead.
to Toke Dog Films at Hotmail.
Okay, now break that down
Yeah.
phonetically. Okay, go ahead.
See, nothing to do with smoking anything.
Right.
The toke is the tip, I think,
Right.
that you give when you play blackjack. You
Yes,
win a billion.
yes,
You throw
absolutely.
the toke, a
Yeah,
buck. or whatever.
understood.
Okay, so Toke, TOKEDOG Films with an S
Absolutely.
at Hotmail.
Great.
We'd love to hear from you. If
Sure.
you have any questions,
Right.
story, topic ideas, whatever, we'd love to hear from you here on Movies and More. Just send it to my attention, John Brandon. I'll see it. Unless I get like 1 million of them from this, I'll see everyone and I'll respond to each one, and we'll try to get these on.
Real quick, I'd like to give you my email address
Go
as
for
well.
it.
My first and last name, Stacy, Stacey, Hovis, Hovis, 57 at yahoo.com.
Yeah.
And as John said, we'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. We'd love to hear about your thoughts or comments. And really, we got a lot of suggestions on a lot of what I would say curiosities,
Sure.
more or less about our business and things that I guess we think about that's every day to us actually are new to other people. And we're more than happy to share
Yeah.
our successes and our not so many successes or whatever.
Yeah.
It was written one time that success needs no explanation. Failure can allow no alibi. You know?
Yeah.
And so I guess that's probably a lot true. But what do you have coming up I guess about the 2.5 minutes we have remaining? What
We're down to one.
John,
minute.
go ahead.
I plan on winning the lottery and living in Fiji the rest of my life. Very happy.
Well, I tell you what, I hope that you have the island for two. We're definitely looking forward to that. Well, listen, we wanted to thank everybody for spending their time with us today, listening to our show. And as we said, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to share with you our experiences and talk about the business.
Yeah.
And what's not really nice, I can just say this real quick. 40 years ago, 45 years ago, screenwriters and extras were considered the bottom of the totem pole. We weren't
And
really
mistreated.
and mistreated.
Redheaded
But today,
stepdaughter.
but today, the industry has awoke, as it were,
Yeah.
to the fact that we're pretty doggone important.
We'll end on that note, brother.
We will end on that note. Well, listen, thank you again. for watching, listening to Movies and More. And don't forget to take Mama to church on Sunday. Bye-bye.